Good afternoon. I can't believe it's afternoon. Nice to see everybody. Our next speaker is Jon Li, who's the head of US operations at XREAL. In addition to designing Motorola's first touchscreen phone and the first Linux smartphone, Jon co-founded a product design studio, Android software company, and a wine retail store. Before joining XREAL, Jon led an autonomous driving team and the development of an electric vehicle for rideshare and delivery. Jon will talk to us about market adoption and growth trajectory for augmented reality glasses and about the recent display and processing advancements consumers are looking for. Please join me in welcoming Jon Li.
Thank you. All right, good afternoon, everybody. All right, thanks for coming. It's been a long show, and thanks for taking a few minutes to hopefully have a little bit of fun this afternoon. I wanted to keep it lively and kind of hopefully somewhat informative and hopefully a little entertaining in the process. But again, thank you very much for having me today. All right, okay, there are my slides. So Jon Li, head of the US market for XREAL. And the clicker is working. All right. So for those who aren't familiar with XREAL, we are a team that we got started in 2017 with basically 600 employees across the globe, primarily in Beijing, but we're just now set up a US office here in Sunnyvale. And here in the US, we are right here in the Plug and Play Center. If you joined us for the pre-AWE event this year, thank you for coming. For those who missed it, please make sure you are there for next year. And here in Sunnyvale, we're really, in the US really, we're looking to build an ecosystem to really bring more apps and content to the user. We're really focused at XREAL to bring augmented reality to consumers. And so once you, as a consumer, put on this pair of glasses, you want to be able to see stuff, you want to be able to do stuff. And so for my role here in the US, it's about trying to find those developers, try to find those partners to work together and really bring some really augmented, great stuff to the consumers. So please do reach out to me anytime to then see how we can work together to make that happen. So a little bit about myself, and to set a little bit of context in terms of some of my comments I'll be sharing today. And without going through the long, boring timeline here, just a quick glimpse. I've been started my career with mobile phones, UI, UX background, and really had an opportunity to see the phone go from just a keypad and maybe function 4 for the battery, function this and that for the contact list, if anyone remembers. And so from there to see touchscreens get introduced, QVGA 320 by 240, who remembers those days, the size of a Post-it note, to then eventually the cameras, color screens, and eventually what we know as a smartphone. I'll take us a little bit through that journey today. And then to where it really kind of started to become the mobile internet. From there, I did a design studio in Shanghai where we had some amazing clients from all over the world, and eventually found myself back in the US and at an amazing company doing thermal imaging devices, CBRNE, chemical, biological, radiation, nuclear explosion detection, and so on and so forth, before joining the EV industry and most recently XREAL. So it's really with that consumer mindset and thinking about how do people really use devices that I'd like to share a few of these slides. Oops, hit the next button, not the laser pointer. All right, so in the beginning, how do we communicate? How do we transmit stories? It was word of mouth, by the fire, and unfortunately, that's only as far and as fast as you could go. How far could you walk? How far you could ride your horse, your camel, etc. And then eventually, we got to the point where we're able to maybe wave at people in the distance. But as you can see, this really small person here, there's a line of sight issue to deal with. And then as we then start to get into some technology, where you start to write things down, maybe put it on some paper that can be rolled up and transmitted more quickly. One thing I was just kind of taking a look at the little Google thing about the Pony Express. I didn't realize 10 days to get from Missouri to California. And if you really zoom in on this poster to try to recruit people, I'm looking for young, skinny, wiry fellows, not over 18, must be expert writers willing to risk death daily. Orphans preferred for $25 per week, which probably was pretty good to pay. So we've come a long way from having to use this type of perilous communication method to get our thoughts and our ideas across to other people. So now we get into more and more technology. So again, you go from sort of just waving, sort of the sort of ideas of how you can transmit data by waving to then eventually writing. Now we're finally getting to the electrical age, where the first phone call was in 1876, and they didn't realize the first rotary phone was around 1919. And that's where you started to realize that, okay, from point-to-point communication, I need a switchboard, and you need to start to patch things, and now I need to be able to find someone by some number system. And it was really only 97 years between the first call to the first cell phone call. So think of how much technology has been invented, how much electronics, how much of the transmission towers, all these things that had to happen to make this happen. So then if we fast forward a little bit to who remembers address books, actually real physical address books? How many remember the telephone directory or the yellow pages, right? My kids will never enjoy those lovely pleasures. How many people actually, and what was interesting, as I was doing some research last night, social issues popped up that were advertised. How do you keep your teenager from using the phone all the time? Well, might as well add a new line, right? So teenage tie-up was a social issue at the time. And then again, from the address book to then this lovely thing, who here remembers filling this thing up and now having to buy a whole new one, then having to copy everything over. Eventually, you're going to lose some things. And then in '96 came the Palm Pilot. And suddenly, all of this sort of personal information management really started to take off. And with that, I didn't realize the first Motorola pager was done in 1921. And that was just a little number that would appear on your side, and doctors even today still use it because it's so reliable. I didn't realize that the systems are still running. But it was around that time that if you take the Palm Pilot chipset, you add the Motorola paging chipset, and then, in this case, a tri-band Motorola phone, we, in 2000, worked together and built the first touchscreen cell phone with Chinese handwriting recognition, English handwriting recognition, no keys, and really the first kind of smartphone before they were called smartphones. And so now we take a quick look at kind of the journey from PC internet, as Chi shared the slide the other day, over 2 billion users using it 2 to 6 hours a day, primarily with a mouse and keyboard. And then the mobile internet with 5 billion users using a little bit more a day and using touchscreen, and then this sort of spatial internet. And if you really kind of think about it, was the 90s that the mouse and keyboard, the PC was really the heyday, and the internet and email and so forth. It's really the 2010s that the sort of touchscreen cell phones really were dominant. And then if the spatial internet is in the 30s, likely this kind of space we're looking to address today is now, 2020s. We're not able to get to AR immediately in one step. How do we take those little baby steps to get there? And so I believe that with the spatial display and sort of the direction that we're headed, it's about how do we bring the consumers along, what's relevant to them, and then how do we eventually get to that AR space. Meanwhile, with all these internet phones and whatnot, some of the unintended consequences is that apparently this JAMA Network journal here, Journal of American Medical Association, I think is what it's called, found that over a 20-year period, people distracted by cell phones were tripping, falling, hurting their heads and necks with injuries increasingly steeply. And if you didn't know this already, for those ergonomics human factors people in the field, your head weighs 10 to 12 pounds. And at 0 degrees in neutral position, it doesn't really put a strain on you. But as soon as you start to lean forward, you're putting 60 pounds of force on your neck. I don't think our necks are really designed to hold 60 pounds of pressure. But that's what these cell phones are doing to us, because the display is in your hand and you're starting to look down. So how many people have actually laid in bed trying to finish up a video or a movie? How many people have maybe fallen asleep and it's fallen on your face or woken up because you dropped the phone, right? I think a lot of us. So the other day I was just thinking, hey, I wonder if I can find a solution to this. And sure enough, there's over 17,000 ratings for this product alone on Amazon. So clearly, I'm not the only person who has this problem, and clearly people are looking for solutions. Well, that's why I was really happy to join XREAL, because this really gives you an opportunity to, okay, lie in bed and watch all night. Maybe that's not a good thing. But at least ergonomically, your head doesn't have 60 pounds of pressure. So where are we all headed with this? Oh, wow, it's almost 13 minutes now. Okay, I better hurry up. So trying to have a little fun here today. So who remembers this movie? What year was it? 1991. This was the first Terminator, 1984. So this is not the first time you see augmented reality concepts in movies by any means, but at least for, I think, a lot of us in recent movie history, you can remember this one for sure, where you see all the image recognition, facial recognition, and so on and so forth. This technology exists today. Obviously, this iconic scene where Tony Stark is sitting in his lab, raising his arms, pushing and pulling objects, 2010. This we can do today. If you have a pair of the XREAL glasses, you have your spatial display. And now with some gesture recognition, hand tracking, and so on and so forth, we can really start to achieve this type of an experience. But we all want to get to all-in-one, all-day wear. As light as the glasses I have on my face, 20, 30 grams at most, ideally. And you can wear it all day because you have infinite battery, you have infinite connectivity, you can really start to identify people, you can really start to immerse yourself in data. One thing I like to say, oops, I better watch the time here. One of the things I like to say is that before it was about surfing the internet, where you have web page upon web page, and you're kind of surfing, skimming across the top layer of the internet. You don't really dive into the internet in that sense. But I believe with where we're going from spatial computing, augmented reality point of view, it's really about immersing ourselves in the data. And so I want to coin the concept of diving into the data. So hopefully we are all now diving into the internet as we start to really get into this augmented reality space. And so at XREAL, it's really about bringing mixed reality XR for all. But here's where I want to take a little bit of time to address what's happening next week. So in 2000, we released the first touchscreen cell phone at Motorola. It was a short 7 years later that Steve Jobs was presenting the first iPhone. And one of the things I really remember, am I jumping ahead of myself? Okay, so let me ask this quick question. There's a lot of things to Steve Jobs' success, but just since we have some time left, throw a couple of reasons why you think Steve Jobs was so successful over his years. Passion? All right, absolutely.
Obsession with design and usability.
Obsession with design and usability, extremely key.
Perceptive of how people live.
Perceptive of how people live, right? People don't want to have to figure out where to get their MP3 music and trade and then have to figure out how to get onto a device and then how to get some blah, 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 right? So let me fit 1,000 phones in my pocket. Any other ideas? So I would conjecture his biggest contribution to computing as we know it is really the point and click or point and tap. So how do you select something digitally? Initially with a mouse, right? Desktop metaphor, I mouse over and then click. Or with the iPhone, I remember very clearly because at the time, we were all using styli, whatever the plural is, right? So with the PDA Palm Pilot and Graffiti, with all the things like Compaq, iPad, all these things that came thereafter, and at Motorola, we were using a stylus to write things. I remember clearly that Steve Jobs says, I don't want to deal with a stylus, I want to use my finger. And so with that passion, with that focus on usability, 2-year-olds can use an iPhone, iPad because all you have to learn is how you swipe up and down or left and right and tap. There are no menus. You don't have, like an Android, this little 3 hamburger menu, tap it and see all the menus and try to figure it out. Because mentally, there's a lot to unpack there. So with the iPhone, iOS, iPad, etc., a 2-year-old can figure out how to use it. So with that focus and that passion and that drive to drive the engineering teams to really use that as a key guiding principle, I believe that's what's really powered his success from the Macs through to the iPhones. And so I'll leave this little bit of thing to think about here. I think I need to credit, I think, CNET or one of these websites for this image here. But my question is, for Mr. Cook, how will we all point and click in this new digital augmented space? So with that, I'm really excited to see what Apple is doing, because that will ultimately help all of us in this room, all of us who are watching this space, because Apple will help to educate the market. What they say moves markets. News media will report it. The world will know what is VR. Today, a lot of people still can't differentiate between VR and AR. So hopefully we'll see. Well, hopefully they'll clear up that understanding. But ultimately, they will help to lift, in my mind, the boats, all of the boats, if Apple is successful at this. So I do hope that they're successful, so we can all benefit from it. But meanwhile, thank you so much for your time today, and really appreciate your attention. And feel free to ping me anytime. I'd love to connect with you if you're looking to partner with us and or chat about old technology or new technology. Thank you so much.